Welcome to Twisted Threes. Please like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you don't miss the next Twisted Stories. To support the channel, you can visit us at twistedthrees.com. Now let's see how twisted the world is today. In this brief guide, we will look at the story about John Jones Cave and how this tragic situation unfolded. The cave was first explored in 1960 by Dale Green, is currently owned by the Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration and managed by the Utah Timpanogos Grotto. The name is believed to relate to the soft, brown, putty-like texture of the clay found by Green in many of its tunnels. It contains 1,400 feet of chutes and tunnels and, prior to closure, had been accessible via a narrow surface hole. John Jones was an average 26-year-old married guy who went caving in the Nutty Putty Cave in Utah on November 24, 2009 with his family and friends, but tragically got stuck and eventually died in the cave. The story of John Jones getting stuck in the Nutty Putty Cave is one of the most horrifying stories about spelunking and is sure to chill your bones even if you don't have claustrophobia, which many people have said online in discussions about the episode because it reminds us why human beings avoid dark and dangerous situations usually. On November 24, 2009, a man named John Edward Jones was trapped inside the cave for 28 hours. John Jones was no stranger to exploring caves. He had gone with his father and brother many times before. As a child, and exploration of caves was a well-liked activity in his family. Right before the Thanksgiving holiday in November 2009, the Jones family decided to take a trip to one of the nearby cave systems, known as the Nutty Putty Cave, as a way of spending time with each other. John Jones was accompanied by various family members and friends, in particular, Josh Jones, who was 23, his brother, and 9 other friends and family members, and they had decided to explore Nutty Putty Cave as a way to connect with each other ahead of the holiday. At the time of the Nutty Putty Cave incident, John Jones was attending medical school in Virginia, and this 6-foot guy was in the prime of his life, no doubt, with a beautiful family and promising career ahead of him. About an hour into the caving expedition, John Jones decided to find the Nutty Putty Cave formation known as the Birth Canal, which is a tight passage that spelunkers must crawl through carefully, and in addition to being extremely narrow and slippery, it is also extremely perpendicular to the ground, meaning that the person needs to go headfirst towards gravity, the opposite of what the human body is meant to do. John Jones was in a part of the Nutty Putty Cave system that he thought was the birth canal, and he inched his way into the narrow passage head first, moving forward using his hips, stomach, and fingers, but he realized he'd made a grave mistake when he found the passage getting narrower and not giving way like the birth canal should have been. John Jones would have turned back at this stage of his cave exploration when he realized that he wasn't in the right branch of the cave, but the problem was that it was too narrow to even wriggle back out the way he'd come, which meant that he had to try to press forward because he thought that there was a widening of the crevasse in front of him which would allow him enough space to twist and turn and come back out. John Jones tried to move forward by exhaling the air in his chest so that he could fit through a space that was barely 10 inches across and 18 inches high, about the size of the opening of a clothes dryer, but when John inhaled again and his chest puffed back out, he got stuck for good. John's brother Josh found him soon after he had gotten stuck, and he tried to figure out some way to get his brother out, but to no avail, because the space was too narrow for Josh to do any significant pulling on his own, and even though Josh tried to pull at his brother's calves, John just slid down into the passage even further, because the Nutty Putty Cave is extremely slippery. The mud and rocks in Nutty Putty Cave are so slippery when his brother tried to move him he was trapped worse than before, and worse still, his arms were pinned beneath his chest and he couldn't move at all. John and Josh prayed at this point of the cave ordeal, and John said, "Guide us as we work through this, save me from my wife and kids." By midnight of the same day, rescuers had started to arrive, and the person who was leading the rescue team, Susie Modella, reached out to John Jones in the cave soon after. Susie Modella arrived at the cave at about 12:30 a.m. on November 25, and at that time John had been trapped for 3.5 hours. Modella introduced herself to John, even though all she could see of him was a pair of navy and black running shoes, to which John responded, faint and distant, "Hi Susie, thanks for coming," John said, but I really want to get out." After this introduction, began the process of rescuing John from the Nutty Putty cave, but even after about 28 hours of effort nothing could be done. There came a point where it did seem like the pulley system they were using was about to work, and as they pulled John through the pulley it did seem like he moved a bit, but then his feet hit the ceiling above them as his body moved upward, leading to the horrific realization that if they were to get him out, they would have to bend his legs in a way that would break them, and in doing so there would be a shock to his body that would likely either kill him or make any rescue even more impossible. With this realization, it was becoming more and more evident that it would probably not be possible to get him out in time, because even as all these processes were happening, John Jones's body was going through massive cardiovascular stress because he was stuck upside down. When the human body is stuck upside down for long periods of time, the heart has to work overtime to pump blood and to keep it moving away from the brain and lungs, where it tends to pool in this posture. Because John Jones was stuck in the cave for so long, his heart was working far too much and he was quickly getting sicker and sicker because of the posture, and so sometime after midnight of November 25th, John Jones stopped responding, and it was ascertained that he had suffered from a cardiac arrest. After his death, it was decided that it would still be far too difficult to get John Jones' body out of the Nutty Putty cave because he was still stuck at the bad angle, and now that he would not be able to respond to any efforts it was even more unlikely that he could come out. Therefore a decision was made to fill up the cave with his body inside and seal the mouth of the cave with concrete to make a memorial or burial site for him so that the family would have the kind of closure they would have had from a grave. The Nutty Putty cave has therefore been closed since the John Jones incident, and a plaque has been put up at the sealed mouth of the cave in his memory. Rescuers concluded that it would be too dangerous to attempt to retrieve his body. The landowner and Jones family came to an agreement that the cave would be permanently closed with the body sealed inside, as a memorial to Jones. Explosives were used to collapse the ceiling close to Jones' body, and the entrance hole was filled with concrete to prevent further access. A film about the tragedy called The Last Descent was released on September 16, 2016.